So Pawel,
Colin, hi.
I'm trying to understand data types. And
Okay.
I thought I was done at integers and strings, but there's all this other stuff. I heard about this thing called a symbol. Okay, I'll stop. Okay. Okay, what is a symbol? Help me understand it, because it almost looks like other data types. Like, I don't know what's the distinction between this and other data types.
Okay. Symbols. So symbols is one of primitives in JavaScript. We're talking about JavaScript, by the way. So there are several primitives like null, undefined, string, number, boolean, big int, and the symbol. The symbol is usually mentioned at the last time because it's the least used of all the primitives. Actually, I would probably risk saying that most developers never even use symbols. They are so rare that I rarely ever see them anywhere programming, but they are so helpful actually. So how to describe symbols? So basically a symbol guarantees a unique value. So if you create a symbol, it is guaranteed for it to be a unique value. So you can use it as a property of an object, another data type in JavaScript. So what does it mean? So it guarantees you only the code that has a reference to a symbol can access this property. To build from here, to explain. So
it's kind of like a key. Almost sounds like a key to something else.
It's a key in an object. Is a property. Mm-hmm. Key is called a property in an object in JavaScript. So okay. Yes, it is a key where you can put some value into it. But to access this value that you put under this key, you have to have the original reference to this key. So normally in the object, you can create an object that has a name, first name, last name properties, and you can just access them by, the variable and that first name. Easy. But with symbols, when you use symbols to put this value into this object, you can only access this value when you have the original reference to this object. So where do you use it? I've built a web component a couple of years ago. It's actually like a whole ecosystem of web components, and I had I wanted to hide some logic from the user as a user of a website, web application, or a developer, to not call some function. But it's a JavaScript, right? So in JavaScript, you can call basically everything if it's not a private method of a class. So if you mark a method of a class as private, you can't access it from anywhere else. It has to be only from the same class. It's a great idea to have private fields, so no one else can access it. But that also means that you, as an author, you cannot access the same property. So let's talk about testing, for example, unit testing. If you would like to do unit testing on such a class, you can't access it from your unit test. Actually, do you know what unit testing is?
I would imagine unit testing is when you're testing the product, or you're testing the program to make sure it all works, and you're going through all the functions like individually, right, to make sure things trigger correctly and go to the right spot.
Yep, pretty much, yes. He's just testing each property, each function. So each field of the class, how it states, depending on whatever you are doing in your program, and each function as well. So you test one function, you see what the function has inside, and for example, you are calling a function that makes an HTTP request. So you just detect in your test whether this HTTP request is being actually made. For example, that's a unit testing. So in unit tests, if you would like to test your private method of the class, there is no way to do that because you can't access it because it's private. So it's very hard to actually do this unit testing. You would have to call another function that calls this function just to test whether it is working. So what did I do instead? I used symbols. So I've created another file when I would put like a number of symbols in this file, and I would import my symbol to my class and use it as a property. So no one else can actually access this property, cannot actually call this function, except for anyone who would actually have the original reference to the symbol. But I was also able to import this symbol in my unit test and use it to call the function. So it was kind of private, like it was encapsulated, but it's weak encapsulation. It's not like a proper encapsulation of the code. It's a weak encapsulation because you can actually access this property. But how else you would use a symbol? So let's say you have a class, a base class that you can extend in the child class. And with very large programs that you're building, it's very easy to override a function name with another function, and you're not even realizing that you're actually overridden a function in the parent class. So instead, what you can do, you can use symbols in the parent class and export those symbols for child class to use. Child classes. And even in the child class, even if you define a new symbol that even have the same name as the argument, it's still gonna be different symbol. So even if you use even the same symbol with the same name, that is, in the child class, you won't override the original one. So that's why you use symbols in JavaScript, to create weak encapsulation.
Help me understand encapsulation in general.
Encapsulations allows you to hide logic of your program from the outside world.
Okay.
So let's say you have a class and you create a method, whatever the method does. It can be add when you add two numbers, and it adds these two numbers and returns the result. But you don't want this method to be callable from any other place than your class. That's what we call encapsulation. You encapsulate the logic from the outside world.
I still don't quite understand how you're like, I get that you're creating something that can only be accessed when you have a reference to the key, right?
Yes.
And when you're doing unit testing, you don't have access to the key at first. And then your unit test doesn't have access because it's when you're doing unit testing,
you have to import the key. So when you create the symbol, to be able to use it elsewhere, you would have to export it. So you have the reference to the original symbol. That's how you use it in testing.
That key or that export that you're using, that's how you're able to actually access it. That's how you're able to use it by exporting that. But if you're doing unit testing without a symbol, you're just not, and you don't have anything to access. You're not exporting anything. You just have these classes with methods on them that you can't access.
Exactly, because if you don't have the symbol that you created this function with, from your perspective, it's going to be exactly the same as having a private method, because you just cannot access it. You can't enumerate on it, meaning you can't just list this symbol from an object. There is a function in JavaScript when you can where you can iterate over properties of an object. Symbols won't be iterated over. So you can't really get any reference to the original symbol, except if you export it from the place where you declared it.
What does that mean, iterating over it in this case? Like,
so
calling a function and
more like iterating over properties of an object means that an object has some properties like first name, last name, age, for example, and you can iterate over property names. So there is an iterator that will gives you those names. It will give you just the strings names, first name, last name. But if the same object and a class is as a kind of object, has a symbol, it won't be included into those names. So there is no way to extract the symbol from an object. You still have to have a reference to the original symbol to access this property, whether it's a field with some value or it's a method name.
Got it. So if you had like a person object and let's say you've got first name, last name, and then the age was actually a symbol. And so no one can actually access the actual age of this person.
Yeah, because we don't want to, other people to know.
We don't want them to, because this person's really old and they're embarrassed.
Yes, so they don't want to access their age.
No, they don't want anybody knowing. They don't even want to know. Okay, but they've given you permission. Like you're the only one, right? And this person's 85 years old, and they tell all their friends they're actually 65, and so you're iterating over it.
Very much of a difference, to be honest.
No, they all look terrible.
Oh my God. I think we have to cut it out.
No one looks good after 60. I'm sorry. Life is a young person's game. So, all right.
I probably Harrison Ford. I think he looks still good.
No, he looked good when they CGI'd his face and made him look younger. The CGI him looks great.
Yes. Okay. So if you want to hide this property, you would use a symbol.
Okay.
In an object, you can't create a private property. It's only reserved for classes. Okay. But if you have an object, you can put a property that is a symbol.
How much time would you say this saved you when you were actually using this for your project? If you had to go the symbol route versus not using symbols at all for your unit testing,
Well, it's not really, it's actually additional work that you have to do, because you actually have to think to create those symbols, to export those symbols, use those symbols. It's not very even convenient, but it's a balance between whether you want these properties, these functions to be hidden from consumers.
Okay.
Or not. If you don't care whether those properties are hidden, then you wouldn't use symbols in the first place, because there is no reason to. But if you want to use hide those properties, or you are afraid that they will be overwritten easily in child classes, or whatever, some form of manipulation of an object, then you would use symbols instead.
Why would someone want to hide those methods?
Okay, so like I mentioned, I've created a web component. A web component is, a web component, and a component that you put into HTML. So it is in the DOM, document object model. So technically, what you can do is to take Chrome DevTools, point to this web component in HTML, and in the console, you can type $0 and the function name. So technically, you are giving everyone access to this function.
Okay.
Sometimes you may not want to do this. Like if this function makes, for example, a call to your server for whatever reason. So you wouldn't like users for fun, for example, to call your servers, because they just can, make this call this function in a loop 1,000 times, and you're gonna get 1,000 hits into your server. You may want to avoid that. For example, probably there's more examples like this. So that's the reason why you would like to hide this function, this method, from others, so they cannot call it. Without having the symbol, you won't be able to do that.
What about with objects? Why are we worried about people getting access to properties? Just because it's it might be personal data somehow, or?
I mean, you still can. It's about reading and changing the property on an object. So you can still dump this object into the console, and the console actually will show you symbol and the name of the symbol and the value. But if you programmatically would like to read the value of it or change the value, you have to have the reference to the object. So you cannot reassign the value to another variable and use it somehow or whatever, or access the value in any way or change it unless you have the symbol.
Okay, so it's like you're not hiding. This is going to be a crude example, but like you're not trying to hide what's inside. You're hiding you're making it inaccessible to change what is inside.
Or read it. So you are hiding.
Yeah, and read is kind of a weird way in this case because you technically can print to the console what is in it. But when you say read it, like actually have the program go through. And
Programmatically, no. You can read it visually in the console, but you cannot access it programmatically without having the reference to the symbol.
Well, I feel like you kind of covered everything. Is there anything else I should know about symbols? Are there other use cases that maybe you haven't encountered yet, but you could picture?
Actually, there are more to symbols. There are global symbols. I'm just going to briefly mention them. There are global symbols. So you can register a global symbol by calling symbol for and the name of the symbol. So you can actually recreate a symbol just by doing the same thing elsewhere. Symbol for and the same name. So you can recreate this symbol, which kind of mitigates what you are trying to do in the first place. So I don't really find many use cases for global symbols, but if someone likes to use them, you can. It's possible.
Got it.
And I think that would be pretty much about symbols.
Okay. Well, awesome. I as always appreciate you explaining your experience with it and how you use it, and I hope I can find a way one day to use my own symbols one day.
Yes, go ahead. Show me the code. A week from now.
A week from now, I will have so many symbols. Actually, all my objects will all be symbols. Every single property, every single class.
Good luck managing
symbols.
Good luck managing this chaos.
Because I think like because I took a lot of literature classes. You have to think symbolically.
I don't think it's the same.
So I see like the meme with the woman calculating and she just sees all the geometry and everything.
Yeah.
I only see symbols. I can't read any other.
Good luck managing a mess you're gonna create this way.